Mike, we've got a map of the Goodwin Sands in Kent here, but what's that got to do with Thurrock heritage?
Right, that particular chart shows all the shipwrecks on the Goodwin Sands, which is off the Kent coast near Deal, and included in the wrecks is the wreck of the Gull lightship, which was rammed and sunk in 1929 by a ship called the City of York. And the captain of the lightship, Captain Williams, actually lost his life. And that is why, because it was in the Gull Channel, as shown on there, or the Gull Stream, that is why it was known as the Gull lightship. And the wreckage of the Gull lightship is now sitting on the foreshore close by the yacht club at Grays. So that explains where the Goodwin Sands connection comes in. But the actual ship itself, as far as Trinity House are concerned, it is lightship number 38. That's how they number their lightships, and they pick up their names when they go on station, presumably. Anyway, the lightship itself, which we know as the Gull, was actually built around 1860. It's a mahogany and oak construction. It's on a Scandinavian design, I believe, and it is believed to be the second oldest lightship in the world. Now you're going to ask me where the oldest one is. I knew you were going to do that. It's actually over at on the Medway, I believe near Rochester. And I think it's being used, or was being used, as a floating restaurant. Whether it's still functioning, I'm not sure. It's after it had been refitted at Yarmouth. It was used as a relief vessel around Ramsgate and in the entrance to the Thames. Second World War, the Luftwaffe had a go at it. Clearly they attacked anything that floated, and in particularly lights for navigation purposes. So anyway, that was attacked by the Luftwaffe, and it was then towed back to Galston for the rest of the war. It wasn't used, and at the end of the war she was offered for sale, and the Thurrock Yacht Club purchased it for the grand total of £750. Now this is not the first time that the Trinity House, responsible for all lights and lightships, had been involved with Thurrock. Way back in history, there was an experimental lighthouse at Purfleet. There is no remains that we can look at today, but it was at Purfleet, and they used to try lanterns out and different burning oils and so forth, and they watched from London, from Trinity House, down the river, and if they could see the light at Purfleet, they knew that was a good oil, and if they couldn't see the light at Purfleet, they went back to the drawing board. So there's been a contact with Trinity House all those years. Anyway, Trinity House washed their hands of the Gull, sold it to the Yacht Club, who wanted to turn it into their clubhouse, which in fact they did, and it was used as a clubhouse. Lots of members joined because it was obviously a very popular venue, and it went on there until the 50s and 60s. It ceased to be a clubhouse actually in 1971. They used it as a storehouse. It then became derelict. Someone then wanted to buy it themselves and convert it to a floating restaurant, and I think floated over to the Medway over the other side, and they the legend has it that they bought it for the princely sum of £1. Then the story goes slightly pear-shaped insofar as presumably time and money ran out, not the pound but the rest of the money, and so the conversion to turn it into a floating restaurant failed, and it was left sitting on the mud. Now if you leave a wreck, it's quite in order to open the sea cocks so that the tide doesn't beat it every time, but the water flows in, flows out. It will then fill up with mud, which is perfectly okay. It will preserve the hull, all things being equal. But unfortunately, the ravages of time, some rough sea, plus some vandalism, has removed a lot of the superstructure, has damaged the hull. Metal fittings have disappeared, and I would say personally now that the hull is not in a practical condition. If you wanted to close the sea cocks to keep the water out, if you wanted to flush the mud out, I doubt if what was left would float. It looks pretty bad, and there's a lot of time passed, of course, 38 years since it was sort of the last attempt to refloat it. Which presents us with two problems. First problem, what is the chance of it being restored as the second oldest lightship in existence? I would say there's quite a lot of interest in the local history groups and the heritage groups, the yacht club people. There's a group called the Gull Preservation Society who are interested, and there's a lot of knowledge of marine structures, construction. However, I think it would cost much too much for any lottery bodies, funding bodies, to want to get involved with it. Alternatively, one has to say, well, Plan B, what would Plan B be? Plan B would be to salvage any elements which were peculiar to the second oldest lightship, which could be displayed somewhere else. This leads you to the lantern, which is is the light on the mast. The mast and the lantern, which is an interesting shape, I won't say unique, but certainly an old design, would stand quite well on the seawall somewhere, maybe at the end of the town quay, where there's a sitting out area. It would sit up there quite nicely as a symbol of the connection with Grays and the sea and the Thames, etc. And therefore that would be quite a good positioning for it. There again, funding would be needed, but not obviously as many millions as the other